In this episode, I reviewed Blue Collar from 1978. This was directed by Paul Schrader. He also wrote the script with his brother Leonard Schrader, and it starred Yaphet Kotto, Richard Preyor, and Harvey Keitel. I also interviewed one of the cast members about working on this film, Harry Northup. Let's see what Harry had to say about working on Blue Collar. Touching back on Taxi Driver, did you, because I know that you later worked with Paul Schrader on his directorial debut, Blue Collar. Did you get to know him at all on Taxi Driver, or was it not till later?
I never met Paul on that script, on that shoot. I saw him
Okay.
later when he hired me for Blue Collar. But one night Marty asked me to eat at the stage deli, and so it's Marty and me and De Niro and Peter Boyle and Brian De Palma and Michael Phillips, the producer.
Right.
So those are about the only people, De Palma outside of the cast that I met.
Well, Blue Collar, I mean, this is, I have this as well. This is such a great, really, really great film. I watched it again a few months ago because I hadn't seen it in a number of years because I just got it on Blu-ray. And you play Hank in this film. That last shot is so memorable. That's one shot that I've never forgotten as Keitel and Richard Pryor are about to just knock each other with wrenches. It's and then you're in that same scene as everyone's watching this fight escalate, and he freezes on it. It's so memorable. You may not want to talk about this because I know this was a pretty wild shoot. Is there is there anything you care to share about it, or?
Oh, there's so many things that happened that I'd like to talk to you about off camera, but I would say that it was
Right.
Schrader's first directorial job. I worked for Scorsese, his first film feature, Paul Schrader, Charles Eastman, the All-American Boy, and Drew Denbaum, Nickel Mountain. What I noticed about Schrader, it had a strong structure. And I thought of the three main people, Harvey, Pryor, and Yaphet Kotto, I thought that of all, I love Harvey. He's always been good to me. I thought Peter or, Richard Pryor, I thought he may have, maybe it's just the role that he ended up with that role, who comes out ahead, but they were all three great. But I think
Yeah.
Pryor kind of, I don't know, his trying to stand up for the African American race and, his whole work, he was really good in that, but everybody was good. It was
Really good. Yeah.
I'll just say it was like for 2 months, it was like a party. I understand we came to Detroit looking pretty, we left looking raggedy.
Well, there's something that I noticed. I was just I was just going through it recently because I wanted to look at your moments, your scenes in it, and something that I noticed Schrader did was even if you were in the background having a conversation, I could hear all those the dialogues, which usually, as they'll try to bring those conversations down. I mean, sometimes they really did focus on what you were saying because it was important, like the fact that Richard Pryor gets that promotion, and towards the end you say, "Oh, I wonder how he got that." They cut to you, but often those conversations in the bar, because the main characters are obviously they rob the place, so they're trying to hide, but they always have you and everybody else as such a presence. And I thought it was interesting that the dialogue was actually very, very clear as to what you were saying. So do you recall how that worked? Was that just right in the script and you did it, or was there improvisation incorporated?
There was a little improvisation. One time there's a scene where Richard Pryor yells over to me. He said, I was by the jukebox, and he says, "Hey, Hank, put something in there, play someone." And we
Yeah,
did a
yeah,
bunch
yeah,
of
yeah.
different improv scenes. And I said to him one time, I said, go get a quarter from your welfare mom. You don't want to listen to nothing and play what you want to play. You don't want to listen to nothing but your own noise. And then he
Right,
looked
right.
at Begley and them and he said, "I never did like that SOB." But, he was funny. And I always loved Richard Pryor. And then, one thing that day that happened, he literally walked off the set and we didn't shoot the rest of the day. And that's a whole other story. But
Right.
I was thankful to work for Schrader. One thing that Scorsese did that Schrader commented about, he said, "Marty, if you were playing a smaller part, he always gave each person an equal amount. He didn't use a smaller part as a transition to get to somebody else."
Right.
So that's a pretty good element to have.
Do you have you seen Harvey Keitel at all in the last while? Do you remember the last time or do you still keep in touch with him?
I haven't seen Harvey for quite a while. There's an acting teacher that lives here at MPTF, and he was teaching in Paris when the Irishman came out. And so Harvey and De Niro and Barry Primus stopped and had lunch with this acting teacher, and he sent me a card and he said, Harvey said, every time there's a film that I think Harry's right for, I recommend it, Harry. And he recommended, as you know, for Scorsese's first film, Blue Collar,
Yeah.
a couple other pictures. So I always love Harvey. He's a great person.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. He's such a fantastic actor. Thanks again to Harry Northup for sharing his stories about working on this fantastic film. I've always loved this film. I've seen it a few times. I haven't seen it that many times, and just on the last previous viewings I had right before doing this review, and then right before speaking to Harry, I was just blown away by it. I mean, it's so powerful, and what I really see, at least from my perspective, is the influence of film noir on this film. So it it falls to me into this neo-noir category, which also is really exploring the struggles of working class people. And, because it has a lot of the noir themes, it centers around morals, it centers around people struggling financially, and so they turn to crime. It has anxiety, it has paranoia. Of course, it has the crime element, and that is really right out of a many film noir films, and so I can really see how much film noir influenced this film, and he does it so well, while at the same time it has that gritty 70s feel to it, where the main characters are, you really empathize and feel for their struggles, even though they have their share of flaws. We're not just saying here are the good guys and here are the bad guys. Schrader certainly portrays them as having their share of flaws, definitely, but they're human beings with some very serious struggles. And this film is also very scary, and it's bleak, and it's scary in the sense, not just because these guys get caught up in crime, but just the just the everyday struggles of paying your bills, or not being able to pay your bills, and feeling that you're letting your family down, your kids down, your wife down, yourself down, feeling as though you don't have anything to be necessarily proud of, and just the anger and the sadness that comes through. And these guys are pushed around at work. For those of you who haven't seen it, I'll just read the plot. According to IMDb, it's when 3 workers try to steal from the local union. They instead discover corruption and decide to use this information for blackmail. He really, Schrader, deals with the characters much more so, as opposed to a thick plot. The plot really comes from these people's behavior and some of the choices they make. And so you see these 3 guys, the main characters, played by Richard Preyor, Keitel, and Yaphet Kotto. They're not necessarily best friends. Their families hang out with each other. They're friends, but they don't necessarily have some kind of a deep connection. It's just that they find that what they want to do now is all aligns with one another, and that is to rob their local union. And you see them, like I said, being pushed around, immediately off the top from the people ahead of them, from people in the union, and of course this fuels their anger. But what's interesting is that even though they rob their own union, they have a lot of good things to say about the union, because again, there's this sense of pride that they have, that they were part of the people who formed the union. They were people who who, went on strike in the picket lines and got their raise, as Harvey Keitel says to the FBI agent who we meet early in the film in the bar, who's investigating, the union corruption. And, they want nothing to do with him because they're very proud of it. Even later, a little later on, there's a wonderful scene that Richard Preyor has where he goes to the union because they haven't fixed his locker for a number of months, and he keeps cutting his finger on it. So he demands it's fixed, and they hear his complaint. And there's just a moment where he looks at the office, and it cuts to the camera panning across the room of the office and cutting back to him, and it really gives that impression that yes, I'm proud to be a part of this union. So they have this pride, which is why they were conflicted to rob them. They know that they have a safe there. They don't know how much is in the safe, but they know that there's money in there. And Schrader sets it up so that they all have a strong motivation to do it. Harvey Keitel's daughter needs braces, and she used a wire. She put a wire in her mouth to straighten her teeth, and she cuts up her teeth. And so he needs money for that. Richard Pryor's character, it's somewhat humorous. That's another thing about the beauty of this film, is that it has a lot of humor, dark humor. And so he gets caught lying on his income tax. For one thing, he had a side job painting, being a house painter, and he didn't declare it. And he also put down, he wrote down that he had 6 children when he only had 3. So when the guy's coming, the IRS man's coming to say, hey, you only got 3 kids. And he's like, he gets his wife to go and get all the neighbors' kids and bring them over to say that they're all his kids. And the IRS guy says, you got to show me the birth certificates. And so it plays on a humorous level. But then when he throws the guy out, I mean, you really feel sorry for Preyor and his wife. She immediately breaks down, and he owes well over $2,000. And Preyor, this is an incredible performance from him, because he had the rage of this guy being pushed around who can't get ahead. As he says to the IRS man, I got to pay the lights, I got to pay the bills, I got to pay for the kids, I got to pay for the food. I've got, at the end of the month, he has $30 for himself, and now he owes, well over 2,000. So he really brought this vulnerability to it, this sense of desperation. I mean, they all did. Keitel and Yaphet Kotto as well. Yaphet Kotto, brilliant. I mean, he's one of the characters out of the 3. They don't set it up so that his motivation is as strong as the others to go about this robbery, because he actually doesn't have a family. He's not married. He doesn't have any kids, or at least they don't show it. But the assumption is he doesn't have a family like Harvey Keitel and Richard Pryor's characters do. And so he was a criminal. He has had past troubles with the law, let's say, and he had been in jail. So this is why it appealed to him, because it was familiar territory, and also for the same reason, the other reasons that they have, which is that they're being screwed over at work. And they're not making enough money, and they feel that they're not being heard. And what you find out later, though, and it was interesting that he didn't set this up earlier, but what you find out later is that he owes money to this loan shark, which ultimately is what does them in, which that character does them in, which I'll get to in a bit. But I again, Schrader and his brother Leonard built the story so he doesn't just cut right to the action. You get a real strong sense in the early scenes of the way in which these guys interact and they work together. They're blue collar, was right in the title, blue collar workers. They're your average Joes. They, after work, they play pool. They go to drink. They go home and they do it all over again. And so you get to see, and Harry's in those scenes as well, in the bars early on, and you really get to see all that. And I think it works wonderfully because the audience gets a strong sense of who these people are. I just want to mention some of the supporting cast. Ed Begley Jr. is in this. Harry Bellaver, he has a higher up position in the union. He was wonderful in this. He's a familiar face in some of the early film noirs in the 50s and in a lot of television. And he's really, really good in this. I'll get to his part in a bit. George Memmoli, who people will know from Mean Streets. I'm sure that's how he met, Paul Schrader through the connection with Martin Scorsese. And he, again, just the desperation is that, his character was trying to do was use some change to get money out of the soda machine, and it doesn't work over and over again. And so he literally takes a forklift and drives it right through. Again, just these guys who are just pushed, and they bring their complaints to the union, and no one does anything. Just like you saw with Richard Preyor and his locker. At 6 months, no one has fixed his locker. Lane Smith is, again, one of he's the union rep in this, a steward, and he's really good. And you get a strong sense that he's like the middleman between the higher ups and the men working in the factories, in the auto factories. And what's interesting is that you don't see any of those men outside of the scenes with the main characters. It's strictly from their point of view. So the corruption is much more implied, and of course what the FBI guy tells them about how the union is corrupt, and of course when they rob the vault and they find that they have this book of all these illegal loans that the union have been giving out to make profits from. So you don't see, the only thing you see is there's once they find out who robbed the vault, there's a very brief scene where Harry Bellaver's character basically maps out what they're going to do. And not exactly, but gives you a strong impression of how they can get to these men, because the men have this book. They can blackmail them because there was nothing in the vault. So because the union was corrupt, they were going to say that $10,000 was stolen, so they would get the insurance money. So they write them a blackmail note, I suppose, saying, we have this book of these loans and we'll exploit it. These illegal loans, we'll exploit it unless you give us the 10 grand. And so what's interesting is that once the union finds out who did it, who robbed the vault, it's literally just Harry Bellaver's hands saying, okay, Jerry, who Harvey Keitel plays, he's the one who's always, he'll be easy to scare. Yaphet Kotto, who plays Smokey, he will be the toughest guy, so he'll keep pushing for more and more money. And then what they say about Zeke, Richard Preyor, is that he's the guy who this is not the exact lines, but he's the guy who wants more out of his job. So this is how they go about plotting how to get to these men. So of course what they do is they kill Smokey because they feel he'll be the biggest problem. With Harvey, it's not so cut and dry. They do try to intimidate him. They send men to his family's house, and Smokey hears this, and he makes sure the wife is out of the house, and he goes there. It's another terrifying scene. He beats these guys up with a bat to find out who sent them. And so you don't know exactly what they were going to do with Jerry, how they were going to keep his mouth shut. And with Zeke, it was obvious that they were going to promote him. They basically went to him and said, hey, we'll give you this, we'll make you the rep here. And so he has a better job. So again, this is where the noir comes in, is how their morals come into question. So one of their friends, again, it's questionable how close they really are, all of these guys, but their friend is killed. So Jerry, there's a great scene on the porch, on Zeke's porch, where Jerry goes and says, well, we're going to have to exploit them. And Zeke says, I'm not going to go to jail. I'll take the promotion. And he feels that he can make changes in the union. And what's interesting is that you even though what he's doing is wrong, you do get where he's coming from, because another part of this film is it's not directly about racism, but racism plays a part in it. And Harvey Keitel is convinced that the FBI will protect them, that they'll get police protection if they come forward. And Richard Preyor is saying he says to him, "You're thinking white." He's like, "I'm a black man. The police aren't going to protect me." And so he feels that he has to do this. He feels that, if he goes into prison, what's going to happen to his family? And if he takes a job, he'll make more money, which is only going to benefit the family. So even though what he's doing is wrong, I actually totally understand that choice. Not that I think it was the best thing to do, but I can understand how his hands were tied. And he tells, Jerry, who Harvey Keitel plays, hey, maybe you can be the foreman. We'll get you a better job. You see some of the black workers, the black men, as they're working with the foreman walking around, saying things, trying to get them to go faster. And at one point, one of them, the foreman says to one of the men, "Do you pick cotton that slow?" So it's just terrible. So they actually they use that against Zeke. And I another reason why I can understand they use the racist element against Zeke to make him feel, as I took it, guilty, or that he should be grateful that he would, as a black person, even be considered to now have a higher position as the union, the union rep. And, because after Smokey is dead, he's got that really, really wonderful scene on the bridge with Harry Bellaver. And at first, Harry, as Eddie was saying, "Oh no, Smokey, it was an accident how Smokey died." And, Zeke is not an idiot. He knows it was no accident, and he basically admits it, Eddie. And then he goes, he basically uses his race against him to say, hey, when there was a time when black men weren't even allowed to work on the floor, and it was because of the union that we stood up for civil rights. And it's like, that guy, he's so full of it. He's basically saying to him, "You're lucky that you even work here, and now you're even luckier that you're getting a promotion." So that was another aspect. Racism plays a part, certainly, in the film as well. And so now it comes down to, what is Harvey Keitel going to do? And he meets the FBI agent, who's played by Cliff DeYoung. I'm not too familiar with him, but he was quite interesting in this. I quite liked him. And, he says to him, "Well, exploit them and you won't go to jail. And at least you won't go to jail." And Jerry says, "Big deal. There's this big blowout they have," and he walks off. And so at this point, Jerry's not, he tells his wife to go out of town because he's afraid of their safety. And again, this is the anxiety, they show him in bed. He can't sleep. He's on the couch. You can really feel that. It's really done quite beautifully and emotionally. The tension, the fears, the choices, the conflicts, the inner conflicts. It's really, really well done. You can really, really feel what these men are up against. And, you don't know what he's going to do until they try to kill him on the road, Jerry. And that scared him so much that he feels that, well, what am I going to do? If I take the job, they might kill me at work, the foreman, because he doesn't trust the union. And his best option was to go with the FBI. So it's not necessarily that he's trying to be heroic, Jerry, and exploit the union, because at the same time, he did rob them. Even though I think that is partly true. He is basically a decent guy. They all are in a lot of ways. And he's basically doesn't like that they're corrupt, but he's not just trying to be a hero. He doesn't want to get killed, and he doesn't want his family to get killed. And I like how it was done when when someone goes after him to kill him, and you see him keep looking at the bridge, the signs to Canada, because as he says to the FBI agent, well, maybe I'll go to Canada. And he says to them, they'll find you there too. So he's looking at his options are either running for the rest of his life or getting killed at work, or if he goes to the feds, hey, he might get killed even when it's all said and done, but what else was he going to do? That was probably the right thing to do. I mean, he makes the right choice and Zeke makes the wrong choice, but you can't judge Zeke because you understand why he's doing what he's doing, even though they killed his friend. They killed Smokey, as Jerry said. You know, you're gonna take from these guys and basically compromise yourself because even though they killed Smokey, and that's what he was gonna do. And so before I get to the end of the film, which is really, really powerful, I want to just touch on the humor a bit, because the scene I mentioned where the IRS comes in, you know, again, it's darkly funny. And only Richard Pryor can tell his kids to shut the F up, and I laugh, because that was another thing was interesting. Not that you saw a lot of scenes with the kids, was that he actually was openly swearing in front of his kids. And again, it wasn't because he just didn't care. I think he just didn't know any better. And you get the impression he had a rougher upbringing, that perhaps his family spoke like that around him as a kid. And so it's all normal. It's not that he's abusive or anything. It's just that he openly swears, and when he tells them to shut the F up, he doesn't even say it in a way which is mean. He just says it very, very casually. Whereas Jerry is actually much softer with his kids. Other elements that were funny was that, even though Yaphet Kotto has had some past experiences with crime, Keitel, Jerry, and Zeke are not criminals. So this was, it was funny as they were trying to plan how they were going to do it. And they get these ridiculous masks. I mean, the masks didn't even cover their whole face. One of them was wearing glasses where the eyeballs pop out. Another one, Harvey Keitel, was just wearing glasses. And then Zeke is wearing this ridiculous little hat it looked like Dracula fangs that you'd get, you see him and his son like going to the store to buy it. And then even their watch stopped because they had timed it to know when the guard was going to come in, and they're looking at their watch, and all their watches are broken because they got it off some knockoff watches from some street character. So again, the humor, the dark humor, it really was done organically. And, you got Richard Pryor in there. He's funny. I'm not saying he's only funny in the film because, like I said, he captured the anguish, the desperation, and the rage of this man. And there's also, again, this element. They have this scene, this orgy scene, where Yaphet Kotto invites them over, and they all, Keitel and Pryor, find out ways to leave overnight. What are you going to tell your wife? So Harvey Keitel comes up with this excuse that he has to go back to work because he left some machine on, and then Zeke says he's going to help his friend move overnight, and that moment was actually funny with his wife when he's wearing a nicer pair of jeans, and she's like, "Where are you going? Like, you're wearing nice jeans." She's like, "Where are you going?" She doesn't believe him, and just the way he handled himself, he's like, "What are you talking about? These are my work pants." Like, he's like, "I smell right now. Like, what do you mean? I'm not going anywhere." And then when he meets Harvey Keitel, he changes his shirt into a nicer shirt. So again, he's not shy, Schrader, to show you these men's flaws. I mean, they also cheat on their wives, but immediately after this orgy is done, they're all in the same room. The women are gone, or they're sleeping. And apparently that was one of the troubles with this film, is just getting these three guys in the same shot, because there was a lot of conflict. And it's a really beautiful scene where Zeke talks about mainly his problems. Now he owes all these taxes, and he says how much he's disappointed his wife and his kids, and he doesn't even want to think about the things he's promised his wife that he feels that he can't do, that he just can't get ahead. And it's interesting that came immediately after the orgy scene, where you're seeing them like these guys cheat on their wives. And then for me, I took that as not just that they're sleaze bags, but is because, and they're doing cocaine as well. But I think they're looking for escape, drinking perhaps. Well, I'm not saying they're alcoholics, but, they drink, they go to the bar, and hanging out with friends just wasn't enough. They needed to do something else. So now they're drugs, and now they're having sex outside of extramarital affairs. And I thought that was really well done to, not just portray these guys as pure victims, but also as being, morally conflicted and making poor choices. But again, it's done, empathetically, definitely, because you certainly feel for all the men. At least I did. The end, of course, is brilliant. That last shot, which I mentioned with Harry, where they're about to both go at blows with each other, Richard Preyor and Keitel, and then the voiceover from Yaphet Kotto saying that they'll pin you against. He's talking about the Union. They'll pin you against each other to keep you in your place, and basically to zip it in one way or another. So they were just. They're desperate men. Desperate times calls for desperate measures, unfortunately. But that last shot is so powerful, how he just freezes on them right before they both hit each other. And God, what happened, right? You see people holding them back. So who knows what happened. But it's stunning. It's a beautifully acted. The script is top notch. Everything about it, the cinematography, the music, this is absolutely phenomenal. The opening theme song by Jack Nitzsche, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is just so good. It just has this roughness to it, and just this. It feels blue collar, like it feels rough, and you're in for a rough ride on this film immediately. It just sets a tone. Bobby Byrne is the DOP, and again, it has a real darkness to it, and it's just shot very bleak inside the factories, in the streets, in the offices, in the houses. It's just shot straight. And I just felt that the fact that they didn't try to stylize it at all, because even, you look at a lot of neo-noirs, and even film noir was, often was done with expressionism or stylizing it in one way or another. And here it is none of that. If anything, it has more of a documentary feel, which you really saw as well in the classic film noir period. But beautifully done. I can't say enough about the film. I think it's brilliant. The trivia on the film, as you can see, I tried to find some stories out from Harry, but if you go on IMDb or Google it, there are some pretty wild stories about how tough this film was, and whether it's true or not, Richard Preyor putting a gun to Paul Schrader's head, and the fights, physical fights between Harvey Keitel and Richard Preyor. And, it was a rough shoot. And I know, Schrader had a nervous breakdown over it. But, whether those stories are confirmed or not, I don't know. But if you Google it, you can find out more about it. I have the Blu-ray here. This is from Kino Lorber. Indicator also put one out. It's beautiful print. It has audio commentary with co-writer, director Paul Schrader and journalist Maitland McDonagh. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And it also has a theatrical trailer. So there isn't too many features, but the print is beautiful. So I'm glad that this has been put out, because I saw it on television for the first time years ago. So it's an underrated gem, underrated 70s film for sure. And I noticed on the Criterion channel, because now they tell you at the end of the month some of the most popular films that people have been watching all month, and this is on that list. So I'm glad to hear that. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's only on the Criterion channel until the end of this month, this being September 2022. So check it out there before it leaves, or I'm sure it's playing on some other streamers as well. If you Google it, you'll find out, or get the Blu-ray. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this review. Thank you again to Harry for talking about his experience working on this film. And if you're looking for ways to support my YouTube channel, you can leave a donation directly to the YouTube channel right before the video, right below the video box. You will see the like, comment, dislike links there. There's a link there that says thanks. Click the thanks link, and from there you can directly leave a donation if you choose to. And of course, there is my Patreon membership, which is all bonus content, which I make month in and month out. Head over to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If this is your first time here, or if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that, and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes or when I go live. Thank you so much again, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.